It all started one weekend when I decided to host a small gathering at my apartment. I invited a few close friends over for some drinks, games, and good company. As the evening wore on, we got lost in laughter and stories, forgetting about the outside world. Around midnight, I noticed that it had gotten unusually quiet outside. The streetlights flickered dimly, and there were no sounds of passing cars or chatter from neighbors, just an unsettling silence. I brushed it off, thinking it was just a quiet night, and we continued our festivities. As the night went on, a heavy storm rolled in, complete with thunder and pouring rain. At one point, we decided to take a break from the games and head out onto the balcony to enjoy the weather. That's when I saw him, a figure standing across the street under a streetlight, soaked from the rain, just staring at my building. I could hardly make out any features, and something about him felt off. My gut instinct told me to go back inside, but my friends, noticing my demeanor, insisted I take a photo for fun. I snapped a picture, and as I did, he suddenly turned and walked away into the darkness. We all laughed it off, thinking it was just some guy caught in the rain. After a while, we returned inside, and I tried to shake off the eerie feeling. Just as we were getting back into our game, the lights flickered and went out completely. We were plunged into darkness, and my friends began to laugh nervously. I could feel unease settling over our group, but we lit some candles and tried to keep things lighthearted. Not long after, we heard a loud knock at the front door. It startled us, and we all exchanged confused glances. Who could it be at this hour? I approached the door cautiously while my friends crowded behind me. I looked through the peephole, but I could only see a dark outline. "Who is it?" I yelled, hoping for a response. There was no answer, only silence. I knocked lightly back on the door, half expecting it to just be a prank. As I stepped back, however, I noticed a shift in the air, a sense of dread creeping in. The knock came again, this time louder and more aggressive. Frightened, I went to grab my phone to call for help, but just then, the knocking stopped. There was only a heavy silence that filled the room, making it hard to think. My friend, trying to lighten the mood, suggested we go check the peephole again. As I leaned forward, I was shocked by what I saw. It was the same figure from outside, but this time, he was standing much closer to the door, his face hidden in shadow. The sound of my racing heart filled my ears as I instinctively backed away. I turned around to my friends, but they looked just as terrified. Suddenly, the door handle jiggled. I froze. Had he just tried to come in? Panic set in, and we scrambled to grab anything we could to defend ourselves. Just as we prepared to huddle together for safety, we heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps rushing away from the door. We dared to look through the peephole again, but he was gone, vanished into the night. The power returned moments later, and we were left in the living room, shaken and unsure of what to do next. None of us slept that night, and I made sure to lock all the doors and windows tightly. In the days that followed, I checked with neighbors to see if anyone else had experienced a strange visitor, but no one had seen anything. I often find myself looking out my window late at night, glancing towards that streetlight, wondering if I'll see him there again. To this day, I still carry a sense of dread about that encounter, reminding me that sometimes the scariest things can happen right at your doorstep. I used to live in a small apartment building just outside of Chicago. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap, and for a broke college student, that was all that mattered. The building had 4 floors, but for some reason, the 4th floor was always empty. No tenants, no lights, nothing. The elevator didn't even have a button for it. I always figured it was just some storage or something, But there were rumors, stories passed down by past tenants, that no one stayed on the fourth floor because of what happened there years ago. One night, I was up late studying when I heard a loud thud from above me. That was strange. I lived on the top floor. The noise happened again, a heavy, dragging sound, like furniture being moved. I tried to ignore it, but it continued. Thud, drag, thud, drag. Curiosity got the best of me, so I grabbed my phone and walked out into the hallway. The building was silent, except for the occasional buzzing of the flickering lights. I went to the stairwell and, hesitating for only a moment, started walking up to the fourth floor. The moment I reached the top step, I noticed something chilling. The hallway wasn't dark. The ceiling lights were dimly flickering, casting eerie shadows along the peeling walls. The door to what should have been an empty apartment at the end of the hall was slightly open. A faint, rhythmic creaking came from inside. My heart pounded. I should have turned back. I should have gone straight back to my room and ignored it, but I took a step forward. As I approached the door, I noticed something strange. The doorknob was old, rusted, and covered in scratches, like someone had been clawing at it. My breath hitched as I reached out and nudged the door open just an inch more. The creaking stopped. The room was empty. No furniture, no decorations, just a dusty old apartment. The only thing inside was a single wooden rocking chair in the center of the room, and in it sat a woman. She was facing away from me, rocking slowly, her long, tangled hair draped over her shoulders. My entire body screamed at me to leave, but I was frozen in place. Then, she stopped rocking. Slowly, her head turned. Not her body, just her head, twisting unnaturally far to face me. Her hollow, sunken eyes locked onto mine, her mouth curling into an unnatural grin. And then, in a raspy voice that sent a chill down my spine, she whispered, "You finally came back." I bolted. I don't remember how I got back to my apartment, but I locked the door, shoved a chair against it, and stayed awake until the sun rose. The next morning, I told my landlord what I had seen. He just looked at me, sighed, and said, "You're not the first to see her. But don't worry, she only bothers the ones who belong to her." The landlord's words haunted me. She only bothers the ones who belong to her. What the hell did that mean? I never lived there before. I had never even been to that part of town until I moved in. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in my apartment sent my heart racing. I kept my lights on, my door locked, and stayed under my blankets, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But at 3:12 a.m., I woke up, not because of a noise, not because of a nightmare, but because I felt something. The air was heavy, cold. It was like something was in the room with me. Slowly, I turned my head toward my closet. The door was open. I knew for a fact I had closed it before bed. And then in the darkness, I saw it. A faint outline, a shadow sitting in a chair, rocking. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then, in that same raspy whisper from before, I heard it. "You finally came back." I squeezed my eyes shut and didn't open them again until daylight. I moved out the next week. I didn't bother breaking my lease, didn't care about losing my deposit. I packed everything in one night and left before the sun came up. A few years ago, I moved into a small, old apartment complex downtown. The place was nothing special. Thin walls, flickering hallway lights, and a landlord who barely did his job. But the rent was cheap, and I needed a place fast. My unit, 5C, was on the top floor. Everything was fine for the first few weeks, until I started hearing noises. It always happened late at night. A soft knocking from the floor beneath me. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't random. It was rhythmic, deliberate, almost like someone was knocking from below. At first I ignored it, but then the whispering started. It was faint, almost impossible to make out, but it was always there, beneath me. Murmuring voices, shifting movement, sometimes even soft laughter. But what freaked me out the most? There was no apartment below mine. I had the top floor unit. Below me was just the empty, locked-off maintenance floor. One night, I had enough. I went downstairs to check it out. The door to the maintenance floor was locked, but I could still hear something inside. I pressed my ear against the door. Rustling, breathing, movement. Then right against the other side of the door, I heard a voice. "Come down." I ran back upstairs. That night I barely slept, but at 1:47 a.m., I woke up freezing. My room felt wrong, and that's when I saw it. My closet door was open. I always kept it shut, always, but now it was open just a crack, and from inside I heard breathing, slow, heavy breaths, like someone was hiding inside. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. My heart was pounding as I stepped toward the closet. I took a deep breath, then yanked the door open. Nothing. Just my clothes, my shoes. No one was there. I let out a shaky breath, laughing at myself. But then, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The floor of my closet was wrong. It wasn't the same scratched up wooden floor as the rest of my apartment. It was concrete, cold, gray, and covered in dusty footprints. Footprints leading to a small metal hatch I had never seen before, a door in the floor. And then I realized the noises weren't coming from below my apartment. They were coming from inside it, from the hidden space beneath my closet. I grabbed the hatch handle and pulled. It was rusted, heavy, but it opened. A black hole stretched beneath me, leading down into complete darkness. A cold, damp smell hit me, like rotting wood and earth. Then, I heard movement. Something shifted down there. I shined my phone flashlight into the hole, my hands shaking. The light barely touched the bottom, but in that dim glow, I saw a pair of bare feet, standing completely still. My breath caught in my throat. Then slowly the feet moved. Something started climbing up. I slammed the hatch shut, locked it, and shoved everything I could on top of it. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called my landlord and demanded answers. He seemed nervous, avoiding my questions before finally admitting, "Your unit, it used to have a second entrance, a crawl space that led to the old maintenance floor, but it was sealed up years ago." I asked why. He hesitated, then he muttered, almost too quiet to hear, "Because someone used to live there." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "Who?" He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "A tenant, decades ago. He was indifferent. He avoided people, never left his unit. Then one day he just disappeared. No one saw him leave. We assumed he moved out in the middle of the night." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. But months later, new tenants started hearing things. Scratching, knocking, whispers. Maintenance finally checked the crawl space and found a bed, a table, old food wrappers, and something worse. He swallowed hard before finishing. There were deep scratches on the inside of the hatch, like someone had been locked in. I didn't ask anything else. I packed my things and left the same day. To this day, I still don't know who or what was beneath my apartment. But sometimes late at night, when I'm in a quiet room, I swear I still hear knocking. Tap, tap, tap. And I wonder if whoever was down there is still waiting.